I will never forget the night I saw Uncle Patrick licking blood from a used pad. That moment changed everything I thought I knew about the world. It all started when my cousin, Amora, moved in with us. She had just finished secondary school and was waiting to gain admission into the university. Uncle Patrick, my father's younger brother, also lived with us. He was a quiet man, always keeping to himself, but there was something about him that never sat right with me. I just couldn't explain it. One evening, Amora ran into my room, her face pale with fear. "I think someone has been going through my trash," she whispered. I frowned. "What do you mean?" "My used pads are missing," she said, her voice shaky. At first, I thought she was overthinking it. Maybe she had thrown them away carelessly. But the look in her eyes told me she was sure of what she was saying. I decided to help her find out the truth. That night, we placed a fresh used pad in the bin and covered it the usual way. Then we pretended to be asleep. Around midnight, we heard slow, careful footsteps. My heart pounded as I peeked through a small hole in the wall. Uncle Patrick was in the hallway. He walked to the trash can, looked around to make sure no one was watching, then reached in and pulled out the pad. My breath caught in my throat as I saw him press it to his mouth and lick it. I felt like throwing up. My legs went weak, and Amora clutched my arm so tightly that I thought she would break it. We watched in horror as he folded the pad carefully and slipped it into a black nylon bag before tiptoeing back to his room. We didn't sleep that night. By morning, Amora was crying, and I was shaking with fear. We had to tell someone. But who would believe us? Uncle Patrick was the respected one in the family. Everyone thought he was harmless. We decided to tell my mother. At first, she scolded us for making up such a disgusting lie, but when she saw how terrified we were, she agreed to keep an eye on him. That night, she followed him when he left the house with the black nylon bag. She came back an hour later, her face pale. She didn't say anything, just went straight to my father's room. They argued in low voices for a long time, then my father stormed out and drove away. By morning, the house was filled with elders. My father had called them. Uncle Patrick was made to swear by the village shrine, and when they searched his room, they found several used parts, some dried and stored in old calabashes. The herbalist who was called confirmed our worst fears. He had been using them for money rituals. Each pad he licked, he claimed, added more wealth to his mysterious business. I still remember the look on his face when they dragged him away. He didn't even beg. He just smiled like he knew something we didn't. The next morning, our well dried up. Then my father's business collapsed. It was as if a curse had been placed on us for stopping him. To this day, no one speaks of Uncle Patrick. We pretend he never existed. But sometimes, late at night, when the wind howls, I remember that smile. And I wonder if he is still out there, watching, waiting. Years later, we heard of his fate. After being banished from the village, he wandered from place to place, never able to settle. People whispered that his money had turned to dust and that he lived like a beggar, barely able to feed himself. He became a shadow of the man we once knew. One evening, a fisherman found his body floating in the river. He had tied a heavy stone to his legs. The villagers said the spirits had finally taken their due, that his evil had come full circle. But deep down, I wondered if, in the end, he had simply been too tired to run anymore. That was how Uncle Patrick's story ended, alone, broken, and forgotten.